The afternoon sun cast a warm golden light over the glass walls of the building, reflecting the glimmer of the city skyline. Inside one of the most guarded conference halls in the Chinese entertainment industry, 5 of the most influential stars sat in silence. Dylan Wang, Shen Yue, Bai Lu, Wang Yibo, and Xiao Zhan. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that comes when truth is about to break through years of silence. No cameras were allowed. No assistants. No managers. Just the 5 of them. A private meeting arranged quietly after weeks of escalating controversies that had shaken their world. Rumors of industry betrayal. Contracts torn behind closed doors. Emotional meltdowns caught off record. And a growing sense that someone among them knew more than they had ever admitted. At first, the conversation started politely. Shen Yue, her soft voice trembling slightly, asked if anyone knew why they were really called here. Bai Lu's eyes shifted to Dylan, who leaned back in his chair, calm but unreadable. Xiao Zhan broke the silence with a half-smile that failed to hide his unease. Wang Yibo said nothing, his gaze fixed on the table as though preparing for a storm he already sensed. Then Dylan spoke. His tone was low, controlled, almost too calm. But every word carried a weight that pulled the air out of the room. He said there were things that needed to be said, truths that had been buried beneath gossip, jealousy, and fame. For too long, they had been performing roles not only on screen but in real life, pretending everything was fine while their personal worlds crumbled behind the scenes. Shen Yu's hand froze on the glass of water she was holding. Bai Lu's heartbeat quickened. Dylan looked straight at her when he said, "Not all of us made it here by chance. Some of us sacrificed more than we could ever admit." The words hit harder than anyone expected. Bai Lu's eyes glistened. The tension grew heavier. She had heard whispers before about what Dylan went through, about the pressure he faced from the higher-ups, about choices he never wanted to make. But hearing him speak about it now, in front of everyone, made it real. Then he turned to Shen Yue. The silence stretched for what felt like forever before he said, "You once told me that truth hurts more than lies. Maybe it is time we all felt that pain." The room went still. Even Wang Yibo, usually quiet and composed, shifted uncomfortably. Xiao Zhan leaned forward, his expression unreadable, as if trying to catch every subtle meaning behind Dylan's words. Shen Yu's eyes welled with tears, but she didn't look away. "Dylan, what are you trying to say?" she whispered. He sighed, his voice low but steady. "I'm saying the industry we trusted has turned us into people we don't recognize. I'm saying we've all played along. But not anymore." The statement hung in the air like thunder waiting to strike. Bai Lu broke the silence this time. Her voice cracked as she said, "You think we don't know? You think we haven't seen the truth too? We just don't talk about it." Her words trembled with anger and pain. "But you standing up like this, you know what it means. You know what they'll do if they find out we talked." Wang Yibo's voice was cold when he finally spoke. "Maybe that's what he wants," he said. "Maybe he's tired of pretending." Xiao Zhan looked between them all, his calm demeanor starting to crack. "We can't let this destroy us," he said quietly. "If Dylan's right, we need to fix it together. But not like this." Dylan leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You can't fix something that was never real." It was that sentence that shattered the last bit of calm left in the room. Shen Yue pushed back her chair, tears spilling down her cheeks. Bai Lu turned her face away, her jaw tight, trying to hold herself together. Wang Yibo clenched his fists beneath the table. Xiao Zhan stood, trying to calm everyone, but it was too late. Every emotion they had suppressed for years surfaced in that moment: frustration, regret, guilt, and heartbreak. The walls that fame had built between them crumbled. For a moment, no one spoke. Only the soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. Then Dylan stood up. His voice softened, but his words carried even more power than before. "I didn't come here to accuse anyone," he said. "I came here to remind us of who we were before all this. Before the fame, the lies, the fear. Before the industry took away our courage to speak the truth." His words hit everyone differently. Shen Yue's tears turned into quiet sobs. Bai Lu lowered her head, whispering something only she could hear. Wang Yibo finally met Dylan's gaze and nodded slowly. Xiao Zhan exhaled deeply, realizing that no matter how much they had tried to bury it, the truth had always been waiting to surface. The meeting ended with no applause, no promises, just a shared silence filled with unspoken understanding. When they walked out of that room, the cameras outside flashed endlessly, unaware of what had just unfolded behind the closed doors. But something had changed. The weight Dylan carried for years had finally lifted. The truth, painful as it was, had been spoken. And even though it left everyone shaken, it was the beginning of something new, a reckoning long overdue. Later that night, a short cryptic message appeared on Dylan's official account. It read only, "The truth is not for fame. It is for peace." Fans flooded the comments, asking what it meant, demanding answers. Within hours, the internet exploded with theories. Some said he had exposed the hidden corruption in the industry. Others believed he was referring to a private betrayal among friends. But those who were in the room that day knew exactly what he meant. It was not about fame. It was not about drama. It was about finally facing everything they had been too afraid to say. And from that day on, nothing between them was ever the same again. The world saw stars. But behind those stars were humans who finally found the courage to break their silence. The moment Dylan's words hung in the air, a stillness fell across the entire room. The echo of his voice lingered, soft but heavy, pressing down on every heart present. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe too loud. It felt as if the air itself had thickened, trapping them all in that fragile instant between truth and consequence. Bai Lu sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on Dylan, searching for something behind his calm expression. It was not anger that filled her gaze, but disbelief mixed with the faintest trace of sorrow. She wanted to speak, but every word that formed in her throat vanished before it could reach her lips. Shen Yue looked from Dylan to Bai Lu, her fingers clutching the edge of the table. She had always known there were unspoken tensions between them, but this was different. This was raw and unfiltered, the kind of truth that could not be undone once spoken. The look in Dylan's eyes was not one of confrontation, but release, as though he had finally let go of a burden he had carried for too long. Wang Yibo leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by quiet reflection. He was not angry, but he could feel the ripples of Dylan's statement spreading through the room like an invisible storm. Every word Dylan had said seemed to reach deeper than it should have, pulling up things long buried under years of silence and showmanship. Xiao Zhan's hand rested on the table, his knuckles white. His eyes met Dylan's for a brief moment, and in that single glance, an entire conversation took place without words. It was not about judgment. It was about understanding. About realizing that what Dylan had said was not just for himself, but for everyone who had once hidden behind their smiles and scripts. The producer sitting at the corner of the room cleared his throat softly, trying to break the tension, but even that small sound felt like an intrusion into something sacred. The silence was too deep to be disturbed. Then, Bai Lu finally spoke. Her voice trembled, yet there was power behind it. She said she never thought she would hear those words come from him. She said that sometimes silence becomes a comfort because it hides pain. She said that maybe they were all guilty of pretending for too long. Every syllable left her lips like a confession, quiet but heavy with meaning. Dylan did not respond. He only lowered his head, his hands clasped together. His silence was louder than any reply. Shen Yue stood up slowly, her eyes glistening. She walked toward the window, her back to the others, and whispered that maybe it was time they stopped being afraid of honesty. Her voice cracked halfway through, and the sound of her breaking tone pierced through the still air. Xiao Zhan sighed deeply and said the industry was full of polished lies, that they were all taught to smile even when they were breaking inside. He looked at Dylan again and said that maybe the truth, no matter how painful, was better than the silence that destroys from within. Bai Lu turned to face him, her eyes red. She said that the truth does not always set people free. Sometimes it burns everything that was ever built, leaving only ashes to stand on. Dylan lifted his gaze then, and their eyes met for the second time that night. There was no anger there, no resentment, only the weight of shared understanding. The lights above flickered slightly, casting faint shadows across the table. The air conditioning hummed softly, the only sound in the room. Outside, rain began to fall against the glass panels, slow and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of the night. Wang Yibo spoke then, his tone measured and calm. He said they could not go back to pretending. That whatever Dylan had revealed tonight would change the way everyone saw them, both within the industry and outside it. He looked around the table, his eyes settling on each person as he said that maybe change was exactly what they needed. Shen Yue nodded, her voice quiet as she said that sometimes the most painful truths become the foundation for something new. Xiao Zhan smiled faintly at her words, a rare softness touching his expression. He said that maybe this was not an ending, but a beginning none of them had expected. Bai Lu sat back in her chair, the exhaustion visible on her face. She whispered that she hoped Dylan's words had come from the right place, that they were not just another form of escape. Dylan looked at her, his expression unreadable, and said he had nothing left to hide. That everything he said came from what he had lived, not what he imagined. For a moment, their eyes stayed locked, and the tension between them shifted into something unspoken but deep. A quiet acceptance of things neither could change. The producer finally stood and said the meeting should end there. His voice was shaky, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. He knew that what had happened tonight would spread beyond that room, not through gossip or news, but through the invisible current that always moves between people who share truth. As everyone rose, chairs scraping softly against the polished floor, no one spoke. The silence followed them as they gathered their things, their movements slow and reflective. Shen Yue paused by the door and looked back one last time. Dylan stood alone now, his back to them, staring at the dim light reflecting off the table. Bai Lu hesitated for a moment before walking toward him. She did not say a word, but as she passed, she placed her hand gently on his shoulder. A gesture so small yet filled with more meaning than any speech could carry. Dylan did not turn, but his hand moved slightly, as if acknowledging the silent understanding between them. One by one, they left the room. The hallway outside was quiet, the faint hum of distant voices echoing from another floor. Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan walked side by side, their expressions calm but thoughtful. Shen Yue wiped her face discreetly as she stepped into the elevator, her reflection shimmering in the mirrored walls. Bai Lu waited a moment before following, glancing back at the closed door behind her. Her eyes softened as she whispered something no one could hear, and then she stepped into the elevator, letting the doors close in front of her. Inside the room, Dylan remained seated, the rain outside growing heavier. He looked up at the ceiling, exhaled slowly, and let his thoughts drift. The things he said could never be unsaid. But maybe, he thought, that was the point. Maybe truth was not about peace, but release. As the lights dimmed, the camera would have caught one final image. Dylan sitting alone at the long table, the sound of rain filling the room, and a faint reflection of Bai Lu's departing figure in the glass wall behind him. And then, just before the scene faded to black, his voice would echo one last time in a soft whisper. He said, "Sometimes silence speaks, but tonight it finally listened." And with that, the story ended, not with closure, but with truth.